Hi, welcome to the National Critics' Choice Online News. I'm Robin Stienberg. Welcome to my show again. And today we have a very distinguished poet here in Singapore, and he's none other than Mr. Robert Yeo, who is sitting next to me right now. And Robert Yeo, also aka Mr. Yeo Cheng Chuan, who was born in 1940 in Singapore, is one of the well-known poet and playwright. He has also written a novel, newspaper columns, and on arts, literary, and theatre essays, advocating the establishment of distinctly Singapore traditions. And he has, for many years, a lecturer in the National Institute of Education, and also at Nanyang Technological University. And he was one of the profound individuals that has impact not only in Singapore but also in Southeast Asia and beyond. Right now, I'd like to introduce his book, The Best of Robert Yeo, is now available in all online as well as bookstores in the world. So do check it out. And it's actually published by Epigram. And in fact, I would highly recommend anyone who is a great avid poetry, please try to catch all of his copy. It's going around pretty soon, but you never know. It's one of those most limited copies around in Singapore and in the world. Mr. Robert Yeo, welcome to our show here at the National Critics' Choice. It's been a real honor to have you.
Pleasure to be with you, Robin.
And Robert, many have asked, how did you, adopt poetry and writing?
I always said that from one point of view, I guess poetry adopted me, because I cannot exactly point to a particular moment when I felt that I could write poetry. Vaguely, I suppose it went back to my days in school, particularly in secondary school, where I think there were 2 to 3 exposures which I think were instrumental in making me think that I could write poems. I remember one very distinctly, which was when I picked up the pocket edition of the great Victorian poem, a long poem called The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam by Edward Fitzgerald. And I started to read the poem and I couldn't put it down. I mean, I can still recite stanzas from that particular poem. And then I guess my interest in poetry was sustained by the formal curriculum in school, where I had to study poems. I remember a particular book called The Anthology of Longer Poems. And then for some reason or other at O level, Cambridge offered a subject called Additional Literature, and I took that paper, and that exposed me to the Augustan poets and Romantic poets. So I guess my interest in poetry was fired, and I said, wow, wouldn't it be nice to be able to write like my heroes, the ones whose poems I have studied and admired. So I guess in answer to your question, that would be the starting point, Robin.
Oh wow! And speaking about the starting point, your experiences about poetry. What is poetry to you in your own perspective?
Poetry, for me, speaking personally, is if you look at the definition, I think one convenient definition would be the best words in the best order. And that comes from Coleridge, the Romantic poet, who was a contemporary of Wordsworth. The thing I like about poetry is that it concentrates language in a way which no other medium does. And because of the ability of poetry to concentrate language, that genre has provided the most number of quotes. At its best, I think poetry is memorable speech. That's poetry for me. At the personal level, I guess I continue to write poetry because, well, wherever you go, if you are provoked by something, it was kind of easy to scribble something on a piece of paper, wherever you are, and you have the germ of a poem. It's kind of difficult if you are a writer of short stories or novels or plays, for you to do that. So poetry had a kind of instantness, which made it attractive to me. I mean,
And Mr. Robert Yeo, what is like growing up, in London? I know that you have traveled to many countries, in your career, and as a poet, what is it like to be a poet during the early years in Singapore as well as even in Europe? How do people perceive an Asian able to write a poem?
okay, being in Singapore, I guess. I don't think anybody was discouraging about the fact that I wanted to write poems. I mean, my path was, in a sense, traditional. I went to university and I took English, and I was scribbling. I had been scribbling in school and continued my scribbling in university. And then I became a school teacher and I continued writing. And most of the time, people in Singapore were encouraging. Radio Singapore, for instance, would come and ask me to record poems, And then I continued writing when I was in UK, and I was actually president of the Poetry Society of the Institute of Education. And none of my English friends ever sort of looked at me with surprise as if to say, "What? You write poetry in English?" I think they had probably grown up to the idea that English was and I'm speaking of the 60s, a Commonwealth language. And yes, of course, if you have been colonized, why shouldn't you be able to write in English? And why shouldn't you be able to write poetry in English? So there really wasn't a problem of my friends and contemporaries being surprised about me writing in English.
Now, growing up in the 1960s and through the history of Singapore's development,
Yes.
how is your family view towards writing poems and being a poet yourself? Did your father and your mother ever support the idea into writing poetry, or even being a writer, as part of a profession or a passion?
Passion, yes, more passion than a profession. Good question, Robin, except that I'm not able to answer it in the sense that my father died young. The year I graduated, he passed away, so he was not around to know what I did with my ability to write. And
But was he aware?
No, not at all.
Oh, I see. So you kept it a secret from him?
No, in the sense that he died. He passed away when I was 21, 22, and I didn't publish my first book until 10 years later. You know what I mean? So my father didn't know that I nursed writing ambitions. Those days, my father was a wonderful person, very warm person, but in some ways also quite remote, because I didn't really talk to him about these things. Do you know what I mean? And as for my mother, although she had a minimal literacy, I don't think she understood what it means to have for me to be a writer. So I must say that in a sense, although I dedicated my first book of poems to my late father and to my mother, I'm not sure that it means very much to me.
I understand. Now, during those trying years in Singapore, as Singapore begins to develop, did the society itself alone actually recognize Asians who have the ability to read and write the way you do? Or was it a challenge in terms of race?
Not at all. I mean, I didn't feel that it was a challenge. You wrote, and a lot of friends and relatives were appreciative whether or not they knew what you were doing. I mean, it was just you know, wow, you can write, and you have published in magazines and newspapers and broadcasts over radio. That's wonderful. So there were, in a sense, a lot of encouragement. All right, no discouragement till it came later. And I'll talk about that later if we have a chance to talk about it. Yeah.
Yes, but speaking of which, moving forward, your passion as a poet and also in other areas such as being a novelist and so on, you decided to write poetry in such a way that you try to bring issues of what's happening here in Singapore, the way people perceive, the way people live, and also pronounce their understanding towards the way policies were implemented. And why would you choose to do that?
Good question, Robin. I guess when I first started writing the poems were mostly personal, you know, inside yourself. And I published my first book of poems called Coming Home Baby in 1971. I was surprised to find out how many of the early poems were about two subjects important to an adolescent, or to young man growing up: love and death. You know, I mean, these were really heart-tugging emotions. But as you grow up, or as I grew up, I began to feel the weight of important social occasions, political events that impacted on my life. And then as I came under the influence of poets, I was reading particularly poets like W.B. Yeats and W.H. Auden. These were poets who fused the personal with the public, who didn't write about the personal, just about the personal, but wrote about the personal in a broader national context. Yeats falling in love, and his role as a senator, his role in creating the Irish stage, falling in love with Maud Gonne. You know, the whole thing is interfused. W.H. Auden writing love poems amid, if you like, the politics of the 30s and the impending Second World War. So I admired this ability to fuse the personal with the social, because I think it will give two poems an edge. And this is something I followed all the way in my writing. In one of my latest called Roots, my memoir, 1940, 1975, I wrote not only about me growing up, but I wrote about me growing up and the Singaporean nation growing up. So the two, the public and the personal, are inextricably fused together, put together.
Now, your influences of writing of poetry, who were your mentors in the early years that actually guide you, or were there any readings that you find so profound that has impact the way you perceive poetry?
Well, I wouldn't say that I had a mentor. One person who had been an influence, and we met only once, was obviously Edwin Thumboo, the pioneer poet. Everybody wanted to meet him to find out a little bit more about writing poems, and I met with him one time, and I learned a couple of useful lessons from him. But after that, I began to read the great modern poets on my own, and learned by reading, and learned by talking and meeting other poets, and looking at their poems, their strategies, their styles, and how I can, on my own, manage my own progress as a poet.
And as a poet, what were the two key lessons that you learned from Edwin Thumboo?
Oh, I would say that he taught me the importance of that if you have come up with a strong image that and you want to develop that image, that you ought to be able to maintain the strength of that particular image, be it a simile or a metaphor. That's what I learned from him. So it was a very valuable lesson. And I suppose secondly, I suppose it has to do with longevity. I mean, keep on writing. I mean, he started writing a long time ago. He's in his late 70s and he's still writing. So yes, two important lessons.
And speaking about longevity itself, were there any memorable experiences that you have encountered as a writer, poet, for over such a long time?
Memorable moments.
Yes, probably just if you have three.
Oh, okay. I remembered being lucky enough to be invited to the University of Iowa, the famous international writing program, back in '78, and being able to meet some poets around the world, and being able to meet them. And in fact, I have a poster hanging back there of me reading in Jim's bookshop. That was '78. Oh, prior to that, of course, being in London and being able to catch all kinds of poetry readings internationally. And one of my most memorable incidents of listening to poetry was to listen to Allen Ginsberg read in the Round House. I think that might have been 1967, and that was an influential moment because from Ginsberg I learned how to move away from the regular metrics of my earlier poems, write something that was freer, more free verse lib, and in that sense opening up my writing style. So I said these were two memorable moments.
Now, speaking about those moments, about your wife, how does she perceive your work? Because many women out there would look at poets as great writers, great specialists, but in terms of making a living out of poetry, it can be very discouraging. So, do you actually make poetry a living out of it, or a passion?
It's a passion. There's no way you can make a living out of poetry. Well, certainly not in Singapore. My wife, of course, would like me to write bestsellers, but I'm not into writing bestsellers. And since poetry is a passion,
But are you disappointed that you're not a millionaire or any sort?
well, no, because I know that I cannot write bestsellers, and I really, if I knew that I can, I would attempt it. But I know that I can't.
So why would you choose to write poetry, even though it is not something that it will not be commercially viable, but although it's all passion, but why? Is there something that's deep in your spirit that wants you to shout and express that this is what you need to do?
No, it's a very pragmatic thing. Robin, for many years until I retired in 2002, I had a job. So, I don't need poetry to support me. So poetry can remain a passion, a pastime. Yeah.
But would you see the future of poetry as something that can be a profession?
In Singapore, no way. The only professional writer I know, someone approaching writing as a profession, is Catherine Lim. I don't know anybody else who can depend on writing alone to sustain him or her. Possibly Suchin Christine Lim, the novelist, who might be able to live, hopefully, out of royalties and from residencies and prizes that she has won and can win. That's it, but I don't know of any other persons in Singapore who can make a living. I mean, you're not able to in Singapore's
Now,
books the way that J.K. Rowling.
but you have won some awards. I was impressed that you won you got a public service medal, which is for drama,
Yes.
and also other plays that you've written. And
No, I must clarify that the public service medal that I won is not so much for my merit as playwright, but more for my promotional activities. And last year I won the Southeast Asian Write Award for a lifetime of writing. Right in between, I did not win any awards. Yeah.
so you chose to write as a passion throughout your life.
Yes. That's what keeps you going. If you write. It's a passion, I suppose. If you wrote for money, that could also keep you going. But
Would that change the way the reader will perceive your writings, and especially if it's commercially
viable.
Written in the sense the style?
I really don't know. I have occasionally from time to time thought it would be nice if I could write professionally, that someone commissions me to write, say, a book about a corporation or a book about a person. But I have not gone into it. Somehow I have resisted it.
Do you think, I have another question, and that's one of my readers are asking, do you think that if you were offered money to write, would that change the way you express, and would people able to detect that the way you write will not have any passion or feel or even emotion because it's written commercially compared to someone who writes passionately?
No, I think that if I'm interested in autobiography and biography, and I'd be interested to write the autobiography of someone I admire, provided I'm paid for it. So then there are two things down there. There's passion for that particular person, and since I'm retired, there's the money that I need in order to continue writing, in order to sustain writing. So the two can be combined, but it must be about somebody I admire, and it should not, on the whole, be a 100% approved biography, in the sense that I'm only going to say absolutely good things about that particular person. But a good biography should tell the truth, and the truth could be warts and all. So there is a worthy subject, and the money is right, I'll take it.
Now, speaking about the future of poets, between print and e-book, do you have any objections with the way publishing is moving towards, especially more and more individuals such as the new upcoming generations are now adopting more of using technology to be able to read and access to material compared to a hard print material?
I mean, I welcome the new technology, but I grew up as a print person, and I will remain firstly a print person. I think the book is not about to die. It's so wonderful an instrument, because you can put it in your suitcase, in your bag, you can take it to the beach, you can exchange it in backpacker hotels, you can underline it, you can lose it and recover it without feeling that you've lost something of great monetary value. So it's the handiness of a book that I think it will remain for a long time. And as for things like Kindle and e-books, yes, fine, go ahead and read me in these two things. And some of the contracts that I sign provide for both print and e-copies. So, fine. And to each his own, I would say.
And Mr. Robert, now it is said that you were born in a Peranakan family,
Yes.
and you grew up in a village in Aukang. Is it true that some of your works were also inspired, and in your writings, and also apart from that, is there any cuisine from your Peranakan background, you have written about in your poetry.
Cuisine.
Yeah,
your
that's
food.
right. Yeah, that's right. Have you tried doing so?
No, I'm afraid no. I do. I do
Would you consider?
I might do that. Yeah, but
Is there one particular cuisine that you love and you can't live without during your growing up years in the Peranakan family?
and I don't know if I would go so far as to say that I cannot live without it because I'm a moderate person, but I do occasionally miss these things, aspects of Peranakan cuisine, which every now and then I will yearn for. I mean, I like the duck, the kiam chai, which we call itik tim.
Oh yes, I love eating tea.
Yeah, and then there's the other one called pong te, which is chicken and pork, you know, which I think is beautiful. And I also like the Nyonya Hokkien Mee. And when I miss these things, then I go to my sister's house because she cooks all these things.
And you have not written a single poem on that.
No, I think about time there's a gap in my
I think it's about time to do that.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
You know, so now, is there one thing that you told your mother that this was the best dish ever that she has prepared? Is there one moment?
Oh, I must have expressed appreciation for my mother's cooking, probably not openly to her, but by absolutely finishing whatever she put in.
Including the eating team,
Yes, on the table. I mean, she used to cook some wonderful stuff. Some of them were dangerously high cholesterol giving, in the sense that she would cook something I used to like a lot. Pig's brains.
Oh,
You ever had them?
No.
They're very delicious. They're lethal in terms of adding cholesterol to your to your bloodstream.
Yeah. So now, having said that, growing up, in your growing up years, and to what you are today, is there any advice for future generations who aspire to be poets, or even being a writer? I mean, because they like to because they want to understand what sort of strategies or you adopt, or secrets you have in mind.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. One is to persist writing. Despite disappointments, you go on writing. Don't be a flash in the pen. And if you find that you're not able to continue writing in one genre, see if you try another genre. I've always never thought of myself only as a poet, but as someone who is, if you like, a writer. Secondly, I think, and I guess I'm fortunate, you must enjoy what you write. If you don't enjoy what you write, why go on writing? I think writing can be a struggle. You can have blocks, you can have gaps, silences, but you will try and see if you are a writer, if you can unlock the gate, fill the gap, and continue. With the business of writing. So I think these are two things that I think are important. They are related. One is persistence, and persistence has to do with longevity, and it also has to do with, if you like, speaking for myself, a certain versatility to be able to move one genre to another. For some years, some time ago, I stopped writing poems and I turned to writing plays. And then no one wants to do my plays. Then I turned to writing a libretto for opera, and then another libretto. So you just keep on moving. And the important thing is whatever skills that you have learned, you can use them for the new genre of writing. say from poetry into libretto, right?
Amazing.
Which combines the skills of a playwright with the skills of a poet. Yeah. So,
Do you have 3 wishes in mind that you have not fulfilled so far?
oh my goodness, I haven't sort of thought about it. 3 wishes.
Yes. If you were asked today,
Mm.
what would be your 3 wishes
In aspect of writing or what?
about anything,
Oh.
apart from writing?
I can't. It's too personal. I can't tell you.
Okay. But how about in the aspect of a poet? You know, is there any country that you wish to?
Yeah, I like to write. No, no,
Travel.
no. I like to travel an awful lot.
Oh,
And I wish the ability to write poems in answer to a provocation, which I used to be able to write a lot of, will return. But if that kind of provocation doesn't come, then I would welcome, if you like, commissions when somebody asks me, would you like to write, say, another libretto? You know, then I will welcome it in the sense that it would be a response to a given stimulus. In the past, the stimulus was something I provided myself. So now I will welcome the stimulus that comes from somebody else.
so
And I
then,
look forward to writing perhaps my next libretto, provided I can find someone I
That-
can collaborate with, like John Shapley, with whom I get along very well. In fact, I've got the idea for writing the next libretto.
so that will be your wish.
Yes, certainly. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
before we go, there's one last question, and that is, before you depart from this world, sorry, I mean,
It's okay. Yeah, no, you don't have to go.
I mean, what will be the one country in the world that you want to visit?
Oh, but I've already, the one country in the world that I would love to visit, I have visited.
There are 196
Yeah.
countries in the world.
Yeah.
Is there one country you have gone to that you want to go to? And
Well, I'd like to be able to go to, well, I haven't been to.
probably even write a poem.
Well, I'm just thinking, well, I haven't been to the South Seas, and I'd like to be able to get,
And write your last poem over there.
I don't know, just go there and see how I will respond to it. You know, isolated island in the Pacific. So,
Oh, with your wife, huh?
yes, with my wife, she likes to come along. Robert Louis Stevenson, Gauguin, that kind of romanticism.
Oh yes, it is.
You know,
On a cruise ship, especially.
well, yeah, so reasonably comfortably, or fly perhaps. I'm not so comfy in ships because you know,
Seasick.
they churn your stomach. I'd rather fly and then perhaps take short trips on boats or open boats and explore great islands like that, like Robert Louis Stevenson in, I don't know which island he went to, Gauguin in Tahiti, you know, there's a certain aura of romanticism that